Nandana Vaja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridharadhari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Radha Madhava ki jai. Hare Krishna. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. We will begin with an auspicious invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All together. Oh. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyutama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. My regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and my rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Could I get a little bit of water? Thank you. So today we are, I think it's already in there. Today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, and we're reading from chapter 14, King Chitraketu's Lamentation. So where we last left off was on Saturday, and we left off on a cliffhanger. Basically, the theme was being a devotee is so rare. So how was Vritrasura, who's a demon, able to have so much bhakti? And they talked about the different types of spiritualists, the jnanis, the karmis, the yogis, and how out of millions of impersonalists, out of millions of jnanis, there's only one pure devotee. And somehow, that was Vritrasura. That was this demon who was out of the millions of impersonalists. Thank you, Dustin. So then we end off with Shukadeva Goswami saying, I will now tell you this story. And then we're like, oh, what's the story going to be? So now we're beginning the story of King Chitraketu. Again, someone please read text 9.
Hare Krishna. Sri Shukadeva Goswami said, O king, I shall speak to you the same history I have heard from the mouths of Vyasadeva, Narada, and Devala. Please listen with attention.
O King Parikshit, in the province of Shurasen, there was a king named Chitraketu who ruled the entire earth. During his reign, the earth produced all the necessities for life.
A small note, but this is the effect that a proper ruler has on the society. Srila Prabhupada says in this purport that there's no scarcity. Scarcity is actually just something of our mind. It's an artificial thing that we've created. There's no scarcity in this world. And when there's a proper king, the earth is happy to produce as much as is needed for the population. It even was saying that Srila Prabhupada said that the black marketeers will cease to exist if there's a righteous king. So all these things, all this crime, all this, this and that, it's because of the lack of proper leadership in our country, in our planet. So, yeah, that's an interesting point Srila Prabhupada makes. Next verse, please.
This Chitraketu had 10 million wives, but although he was capable of producing children, he did not receive a child from any of them. By chance, all the wives were barren.
Next text, please.
Chitraketu, the husband of these millions of wives, was endowed with a beautiful form, magnanimity, and youth. He was born in a high family. He had a complete education, and he was wealthy and opulent. Nevertheless, in spite of being endowed with all these assets, he was full of anxiety because he did not have his son.
So, yeah, imagine this. Srila Prabhupada, he uses the word Janmaishwarya Shri in this purport. So Janma is birth, and then Aishwarya means all these opulences, and Shri means beauty. So Chitraketu had this Janmaishwarya Shri. He had this amazing birth. He's the emperor of humanity, as we'll read in the next few texts. And he has 10 million beautiful wives. Imagine that. That's like inconceivable. And so one might think, oh, how did he get in this position? So what happened was, as Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, he married one wife and then found that they weren't able to conceive a child. So then he married another wife and found the same thing. And then he married another wife and another and another and another until he reached 10 million wives. That's pretty amazing, right? That's pretty far out there. So we'll read a little more. But it says that even though he had all these assets, he was in complete, full anxiety because he didn't have a son. So that's something we'll be talking about today, is how to find happiness, but also how in these material circumstances, if even one thing is wrong, everything is spoiled. You can have all the riches, all the wives, all the, magnanimity and youth, but if you don't have a son, suddenly all of it just feels so empty. It just feels barren. And that's true for any of these. If he had, all of these but no youth, then he'd just be an old man and his body hurts and he can't enjoy any of that. So that's how material opulences in this world work, is that if even one thing is off, you have so much reason to lament, so much anxiety. Next text, please.
His queens all had beautiful faces and attractive eyes, yet neither his opulences, his hundreds and thousands of queens, nor the lands of which he was the supreme proprietor were sources of happiness for him.
Once upon a time, when the powerful sage named Angira was traveling all over the universe without engagement by its sweet will, he came to the palace of King Chitraketu.
Yeah, I just thought maybe we could think, like, what would you do if this was your situation? Srila Prabhupada, I forgot to mention, Srila Prabhupada writes in these verses that, or maybe it's in one of the next ones, but we can just talk about it now. He says that, he quotes Chanakya Pandit, in which Grihastha life without a son or a daughter, Grihastha life without children, Chanakya Pandit says, is to be like a desert. And so that's the primary purpose of this ashram, is to purify through sacrifice. Krishna says, I am yajna, I am sacrifice. And so of the sacrifices, also, Krishna says, I am sex life, which is not against religious principles. So in this way, the sacrifice of the Grihastha ashram is raising Krishna-conscious children. That's the yajna. And so when they are missing that ingredient, when they're missing that result of having a child, the Grihastha ashram is, topsy-turvy, or things like that. And of course, there are circumstances in this world, and so those who can't have children, generally we see that they find some way to sacrifice for others somehow. Maybe they adopt, maybe they become mentors for people, maybe they become teachers, but somehow they try to get that sacrifice into their life, because that's the point of Grihastha ashram. Otherwise it's just, like Chanakya Pandit says, it's like a desert. It's like empty sense enjoyment, essentially. Of course, there's sacrifice between the two of them, but that's really the fruit, as we hear in the scriptures, the fruit of that tree is the high quality children. So, yeah, and now, you can imagine the anxiety King Chitraketu's in. At which wife would you have started praying? After like the 14th wife or like the 10 millionth wife, That's how it is we think that we can just figure out these situations ourselves. We think that we can just arrange the perfect situation. And, you can even try the same thing 10 million times. That's like what Einstein says, is like, insanity means to try the same thing and expect a different result. So, finally, the change that he needs, what he's been waiting for is for the Lord, through his devotee Angira, to stir up the situation. Because obviously, after 10 million wives, what luck does he have? What chance does he have? So, Angira then came. Can someone please read the next text?
Chitraketu immediately stood up from his throne and offered him worship. He offered drinking water and eatables, and in this way performed his duty as a host to a great guest. When the rishi was seated very comfortably, the king, restraining his mind and senses, sat on the ground at the side of the rishi's feet.
O King Pariksit, when Citraketu, bent low in humility, was seated at the lotus feet of the great sage. The sage congratulated him for his humility and hospitality. The sage addressed him in the following words.
The great sage Angira said, "My dear king, I hope that your body and mind and your royal associates and paraphernalia are well. When the 7 properties of material nature, the total material energy, the ego, and the 5 objects of sense gratification, are in proper order, the living entity within the material elements is happy. Without these 7 elements, one cannot exist. Similarly, a king is always protected by 7 elements: his instructor, Swami or Guru, his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends."
So when you guys have ever written an email and you write, "I hope you're well," this is kind of breaking down what that means to say, are you well? So it's talking about these 7 properties, that without these 7 properties, you can't be well. And similarly, for the king, he has his own 7 properties too, which are his instructor, his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends. And we'll come back to this verse later. Next text, please.
O king, O lord of humanity, when a king directly depends upon his associates and follows their instructions, he is happy. Similarly, when his associates offer their gifts and activities to the king and follows his orders, they are also happy.
O king, are your wives, citizens, secretaries, servants, and the merchants who sell spices and oil under your control? Are you also in full control of ministers, the inhabitants of your palace, your provincial governors, your sons, and your other dependents?
Next text. Justin, you can read.
If the king's mind is fully controlled, all his family members and governmental officers are subordinate to him. His provincial governors present taxes on time without resistance, and what to speak of lesser servants.
Okay. Yeah, so we're kind of seeing a little bit of king dharma. So if any of you want to be a king someday, you can read these verses. And it's very important that one's mind is fully controlled, because then everything else falls into place. There was this story of Alexander the Great, I think. Do you know this story? Basically, he wants to conquer India or something, and he comes to this sage or this Baba, and he's like, "Tell me, like, I wish I wasn't butchering this story, but he says, tell me your wisdom, and or I'm gonna kill you or something." And so then, moral of the story, the sage says, "You've conquered the whole world, but you haven't conquered your own mind." So really, that's the most important thing, is for us to have our mind fully controlled. Next text, please. Not on.
O King Chitraketu, I can observe that your mind is not pleased. You seem to not have achieved your desired goal. Is this because of you yourself, or has it been caused by others? Your pale face reflects your deep anxiety.
Next text, please.
Sukadeva Goswami said, O King Parikshit, although the great sage Angira knew everything, he inquired from the king in this way. Thus King Citraketu, desiring his son, bent low in great humility and spoke to the great sage as follows.
Okay. So, let me see. Srila Prabhupada made a really nice point. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, since the face is the index to the mind, a saintly person can study the condition of one's mind by seeing his face. When Angira Rishi remarked about the king's discolored face, King Chitraketu explained the cause of his anxiety as follows. That's interesting. It says that the face is the index to the mind. So we can look at someone's face and we can see what their mind is saying. And that's kind of, it's interesting. I used to think maybe like these sages have like telepathy. I mean, maybe, I'm not, who am I to tell? But it seems quite, something we can experience. Like if you ever go out on book distribution and you look at someone's face, generally you can tell their mind through looking at their face. So in the same way, the saintly Angira Rishi, he already knew all of this before he even asked these questions. Just by looking at his face, he already knew what was wrong. He already knew what was up. But still, he went through the questions, just like we see a few other times with Maharaj Yudhishthir in the first canto. He asks Arjuna this whole series of questions like, did you get attacked on your way here? Or did you lose your wealth? Or are people being disobedient, saying harsh words? But he knew the whole time that Arjuna was upset because Krishna had left the planet. But he didn't want to ask that because it was too painful. All right, now back on topic. Angira uvacha pite namayam svasti prakritinam tatamana ta prakritibir gupta uman raja cha saptabi. Yeah. Inam tatamana namayam svasti pite namayam svasti atmana apakritibir gupta. Justin? Angira vacha namayam svasti prakritinam tatatmana apakritibir gupta. Runa? Angira vacha namayam svasti ita prakritibir gupta raja sasaptivi. Synonyms. Angira uvacha. The great sage Angira said, Api, whether, te, of you, health, svasti, auspiciousness, prakritinam, of your royal elements, associates, and paraphernalia, Ta, as well as Atmana, of your body, mind, and soul. Ita, like Prakriti be, by the elements of material nature. Gupta, protected. Human, the living being. Raja, the king. Cha, also. Saptabhi, by 7. Can someone please read the translation and purport?
Great sage Angira said, "My dear king, I hope that your body and mind and your royal associates and paraphernalia are well. When the 7 properties of material nature, the total material energy, the ego, and the 5 objects of sense gratification are in proper order, the living entity within the material elements is happy. Without these 7 elements, one cannot exist. Similarly, as a king is always protected by 7 elements, his instructor, Swami or Guru, his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends." Purport. It is quoted by Sridhar Swami in his Bhagavatam commentary.
Swamyanyato janapada durga javina sanchaya dando jam chatasyaita sapta prakritayo mata.
A king is not alone. He first has his spiritual master, the supreme guide. Then come his ministers, his kingdom, his fortifications, his treasury, his system of law and order, and his friends or allies. If these 7 are properly maintained, the king is happy. Similarly, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, Dehi nosmin yata dehe, the living entity, the soul, is within the material covering of the Mahatattva, ego, and Pancha Tanmatra, the 5 objects of sense gratification. When these 7 are in proper order, the living entity is in a mood of pleasure. Generally, when the associates of the king are quiet and obedient, the king can be happy. Therefore, the great sage Angira Rishi inquired about the king's personal health and the good fortune of his 7 associates. When we inquire from a friend whether everything is well, we are concerned not only with his personal stuff, but also with his family, his source of income, and his assistants or servants. All of them must be well, and then a person can be happy.
Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All right, so this verse and purport are talking about how to be happy. And so Srila Prabhupada, he says, chant and be happy. So, it's both a byproduct of chanting Hare Krishna that you will be happy, but also he's instructing us that we should chant Hare Krishna and be happy. So I wanted to ask you guys, how can we be happy in our Krishna consciousness? Any ideas? You can just shoot it out. Okay, so first thing is to have a guru. Nice. Any other thoughts? How can we be happy in our service? Friends, okay. Nice association. Ministers, confidants. I guess maybe what makes you guys happy in Krishna consciousness? What is something that makes you happy in your devotional service? Priyat Mridanga Prabhu says, prasadam. Haribol. All right. Stephen said, friends and confidants. Jaishnav, what makes you happy in Krishna consciousness? You don't know? Okay. Anyone back here? What makes you happy in Krishna consciousness? Jai. Manjari Gopika said that she likes hearing and learning more and more, and also kirtan. Who likes kirtan? Come on. What about you, Daniel? Being authentic and sincerely loved. Nice. Anyone else? Steven? You get to travel a lot as a devotee, yeah. Jaishnav, you like reading. Okay. What about Tammy, Aruna, Association? Do you have anything? Yeah. Chanting, okay. Aruna? Senior Radha Kalachandji. Yeah, so what I thought I'd talk about today is I guess what Krishna says about happiness and how Krishna says we can be happy. So in the 6th chapter, he says that if one is... Do you know which verse exactly, Brihat? 6. No, if one is regulated in his eating, his sleeping, his work, and recreation, he can cross over all the miseries of material existence. Anyways, I guess that's the verse itself. So, yeah, for us to be happy in Krishna consciousness, it starts with our japa. That's really the most important thing, and it waters all the other parts of our spiritual life. That's pretty much the essence of how to be happy in our Krishna consciousness, is to wake up early and to chant good japa. Whether you are doing some kind of sankirtan, or whether you're, worshiping the deities, whether you're reading japa, it's like the active ingredient which really activates these different processes of devotional service, like adding lemon juice to a pot of milk. It's really what can, of course we may still do the services, but that's what causes these services to become transformative. That's what causes these services to really go past the mind, body, and false ego and really go to the soul level. When we read, if we've been attentively chanting, we can really feel that it's Krishna speaking to us, and that we're really assimilating what we're hearing. We're really, perhaps not understanding, but we're really soaking it in, and it's going to the heart. When we chant in kirtan, there may be a nice tune, or there may be a tune that might not be your favorite, or the singer might be this or that, but we're still able to connect in that these are the holy names. This is Krishna himself. And when we chant attentively and nicely, when we serve the deities, we see this is Krishna. This is Radha. This is Krishna, and we're serving them. So, yeah, japa is the ingredient which makes kind of everything else work in our life. And, I'm sure we've all heard this many times, but the quality of our japa reflects the quality of our day, and it reflects the quality of our different services. So, yeah, it's very important. And then also on this point, sometimes we don't feel so happy in our bhakti. Sometimes we don't feel, always, like jump into the ceiling in every kirtan, and, or maybe we're a little grouchy and things like that. And I myself, I was going through it was quite a dry period. It was a hard period for me. And I talked to one of the senior devotees, and they said, if a sincere devotee is going through a depression, or a sincere devotee is going through some kind of dry period, some hardship, it's always for a lesson. It's always something that we're supposed to learn. If we look at Vyasadeva, he had this depression in his service. He couldn't understand why he wasn't satisfied. And so these things aren't for no reason. They're for us to examine, and they're for us to make some kind of adjustment so that we can grow, because we're supposed to be happy. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that this process is joyfully performed. So if we're not happy, that means that there's something to adjust. And usually, in my experience, it's from improper hearing and chanting. That will cause me to feel lacking in my service. That will cause me to feel empty in my services. And like we're seeing with Chitraketu, it's so easy to always say the grass is greener on the other side. It's so easy to always say, if I was only in this situation with this devotee, with, and doing this service, or if I was only in this city, or had this much, income or things like that. But Chitraketu, he had the whole planet. He had 10 million wives. He had all this opulence. And what was missing was devotion to Krishna. That's really what can turn any situation into a situation to be happy about, a situation to be grateful about, is when we have the chanting, when we have this attention. I had another point in that, this should be very important for us, because happy devotees make happy devotees. I think that's their tagline in Chaupati or something, is that, we need to be happy if we want to help other devotees become happy. If we want to help share Krishna consciousness, we can't share Krishna consciousness if we're grouchy or grumpy or miserable or gritting our teeth through everything. So it may seem like some kind of sense gratification sometimes to make sure your needs feel met, but that's actually very important in our service, is that we're able to be happy, that we're able to appreciate Krishna consciousness. So I was thinking this could be more of a discussion. I wanted to hear from you guys what makes you happy, what makes you enlivened in your service. And it's 8:15 already, so we can open it up for your own reflections on, how we can be happy in bhakti, how we can be satisfied, how we can be, not always hankering for something else. Dustin.
Communicate. Communication is big.
Yeah.
Tell your fellow devotees how you feel and what you think.
Yeah, actually, depression, I've heard from several times, is repressed anger. And so where does repressed anger come from? It comes from lack of communication. When we're not able to communicate how we feel, that is, like what you're saying, it becomes this depression. And it takes us away from our service. It takes us away from Krishna. So that's a very nice point. Anyone else? Any other thoughts or comments on how you can be happy in your bhakti, or anyone else?
My experience is that I have a unique nature, and there's a certain way of service that makes me the most satisfied. So with guidance of Guru, we can find that service that really resonates with our heart. Like for me, going out and distributing books is something that gives me a lot of happiness. But I wouldn't have known that if my spiritual master didn't encourage me very early on to test that service. So especially when we're new in bhakti, it's highly recommended to try different varieties of services under good guidance, and then you can see which really brings you the most excitement, most taste.
Yeah. Stephen?
I wanted to say this a little earlier when you were talking about Chitraketu getting to his 10 millionth wife, and kind of you were saying, like, why didn't he ask for help earlier? Like, maybe after like the 14th or whatever, like wife, you would want to be like, okay, something's up here. I used to work at an obstacle course, like team building activity place. And there was this one game that we would put like our participants through called the blind maze, where we set up like a maze out of ropes, like in this forest. Everyone was blindfolded, and then we set them in the maze. And the trick was there was actually no way out. But after like a certain amount of time, the facilitators would ask the participants, like, do you want some help now? Do you want a hint? Do you want a clue? And then all of the people who agreed, they would just be taken out of the maze, their blindfold would be taken off, and then they would see like, oh, actually we were struggling, and there was no way that we were going to get out. So I just brought that up to, and then eventually everyone, figures it out, oh, okay, and then maybe there's like one person left who's really stubborn, trying to figure it out. So I just brought that up to emphasize the point of what Brihat was saying, like seeking guidance is really helpful from Guru in understanding yourself and just being reflective and accepting where you're actually at. And I really like the point that you made. If our needs are not being met, if we're not feeling satisfied, if we're not balanced in sleep, recreation, eating, like Krishna says in the Gita, then you actually can't be a yogi. Then you can't appreciate Krishna consciousness because you're going to get fried out. Or you're going to be either fried out or you're going to be complacent. So thank you, that's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really nice story you have. It's very easy to connect that to Krishna consciousness. And how, we are that person who's still in that maze who's like, don't help me, I'm going to get out. Yeah, another thing I was thinking is that, we may look at this story and say, oh, that happened to King Chitraketu. But in our life, we'll find things where it's just like, it can feel like we're hitting our head against the wall. And like we were talking about earlier, it's a sign for us to, look for help, look for, we're doing something wrong, basically. So while it may seem like an extreme example, like I doubt anyone here will have 10 million wives, we'll come into situations where we just keep trying and we need to really take shelter of someone and get enlightened. All right, we went around and we heard what makes devotees happy, except for you, Dustin. Dustin, I wanted to ask, what makes you happy in Krishna consciousness?
Good association, kirtan, food. Those are the main things, yeah. Sorry.
All right, well, now we can just generally open up for any other discussion points, comments, questions, reflections.
I'm wondering how we can know where is the line between taking care of our needs so we can go on with our service and getting absorbed in just selfish pleasure. What are some ways we can try to walk the line and not get too absorbed in our own sense gratification, basically?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure many devotees here will have their own answers or comments they could share. Something I found interesting is that the body, it seems to, if we're sincere, we can really feel when we're going overboard. And you'll have like a pit in your stomach almost. You'll have like wow, I'm kind of overdoing it here. So in a sense, with sincerity, Krishna gives us intelligence. And you can even perhaps see that as Paramatma, that when we're, indulging too much in, taking care of ourselves, even though it's probably not taking care of ourselves if it's hurting us. But if we're indulging too much, perhaps we'll feel guilty. Perhaps we'll feel embarrassed. If you feel like you ever have to hide it, that's probably a sign that it's not good for you. If you feel like you need to go into your room and bring your box of Cheez-Its into your room so no one else sees you, it might not be the best for you. And yeah, that's another thing is association. Association helps us. In a sense, like, people can't exactly tell you what your needs are, or tell you if your needs are being met, because that's something that you know. And I know I've tried, in like some immaturity, you can go, oh, you're indulging too much. But really, actually, this person might just be doing what they have to do. We're all at different levels. So it is quite individual, and association can help. But Guru, Paramatma in the heart, they're like a compass. That feeling in our gut is like a compass that lets us know when we're going off track, when we're doing something wrong. Yeah. Daniel?
Hi Krishna, thanks for teaching. I'm thinking a lot about how I know where my boundaries are, or if I'm going overboard with something, or if I'm getting kind of off the path that I want to be on. And I've been in a lot of situations where it's been really important for me to stay true to my intentions. And so I think the first thing that I've needed to do is make sure what my intentions are, and like kind of having a set of check-ins with myself. The first being kind of a communication with myself, as in, like if it's a need that I need, then kind of setting the intention of, okay, I'm going to check in with myself many times because I feel like this could be slippery, and knowing, and also getting to know myself really closely and my needs really closely, because I've spent a lot of time studying my needs carefully like a scientist for a couple of years now, and so I know exactly where they start and end in most situations. And but something that I do check in with myself is, hey, are you checking in with yourself? Are you still having that open conversation? Why am I doing this? Is this helping me focus on my spiritual life? And I think that those two questions are important for me to continuously ask myself.
Nice point in that. Kind of when you're newer, or when you're new to bhakti specifically, there's a period where you test the waters and you see what do you actually need. You do see what your nature is. You try out different services. You see, maybe I can't do 14 hours of service every day. See, with time, maturity, and also checking in with yourself, you get more realization on that. Did you have something to share, Priyamaranga Prabhu?
Yeah, I appreciate Daniel's point, being very self-aware. And one concept I like from Radhika Raman Prabhu is a litmus test. We each can have our own. This means if I'm out of balance, there may be specific behaviors that I tend to do. Maybe I start to binge eat if I'm really out of order, or maybe I start to just go on social media way too much, or maybe I isolate myself. So we can be aware of what are our tendencies when we're out of order. And then when we start doing that behavior, it could be a red flag. Okay, something's off. Let me check in with myself, like Daniel was saying. And let me check in with someone who knows me very well and can guide me through this.
All right, thank you. Stephen Prabhu.
Something that has helped me out this year, in fact. Also, don't do that. Oh, okay. One thing that's really helped me this year is under the guidance of devotees that I look up to, I began to keep a sadhana chart. And one of the things that I track on it is my recreation. So I have my sleep, my japa and quality, my reading, and then my recreation. And so I'm able to see, like, okay, on the week, on like off days when I don't have service, I tend to watch rock climbing videos on YouTube for, an hour or something like that. And so it keeps me in track, and it helps me, just to see and to keep a sadhana chart and be very honest and write down exactly what you do. And it can be helpful to share that with a mentor or a guru. And it helps to keep you in check. And and then it's nice, I could see, but then on the other days, I wasn't doing that, or whatever.
Jai. You guys are very scientific. I also keep a sadhana chart, so I don't put recreation on there though. Maybe I could. Okay, is this better? Yeah, and I was thinking another way that we can tell if we're, kind of going off the path, or maybe also we're unhappy, is just that we find that the spiritual desires we once had are, they're like a flame that's barely still alive. It's like something you used to be so passionate about is now just barely surviving, or it's like, I want to go back to Godhead so bad. But when we're in these states, we can't access these spiritual desires that we have. So yeah, you can just also look at yourself and see, like, am I loving Krishna as much as I usually do? Or, am I as fired up about my service as I usually am? Because also too much sense gratification has the same effect, that it makes us no longer want to do service. It makes us no longer want to relish service. So yeah. All right.
This reminds me of the point of sustainable sense gratification being like salt in our prasadam. If you have too much, it's going to not taste good and be harmful to your health. If you have too little, then you won't really enjoy the prasadam. So you have to have just the right amount. And it's like that too. If we have an addiction to sense gratification of a specific type, then perhaps we need to just get the right amount, not too much, not too little, so our mind doesn't get disturbed. Because if we try to give up pleasures too quickly, then our mind can also freak out. And then you go to the other end of binging, boga, tiaga. So I've found it very helpful just being honest, like Stephen's saying, tracking it carefully, being transparent with those I look up to, and with the goal of eventually giving up this habit, just reducing it to a minimum that I can sustain right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're quitting cigarettes, people will maybe smoke one less per week and eventually give it up entirely. It's that concept of gradual detachment.
Mm-hmm. I like how you also said, keep a goal. That our goal is to eventually realize we're a soul. Our goal is to not have to need all these things. In spiritual life, Srila Prabhupada said that it's in one place, and obviously we have to take it in context, but he's saying that, I believe it was something around the lines that the goal of our Krishna consciousness is zero sleep, zero eating, zero, that zero mating, zero defending. So obviously, that's a little extreme if we don't take it with maturity. But our goal is to live like a soul. Our goal is to live independent of material nature. So yeah. Anyways, it's 8:30. I think we can close off. And we can try to be happy in Krishna consciousness. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Chanting nice japa ki jai.